Hello and welcome to the final day of Pericles here on Shakesyear. We have Gower wrapping everything up with an epilogue, but first got to tell you what happens in Act 5, Scene 3. So earlier in Act 5, Pericles had made his way to Mytilene, where his daughter, Marina, had worked her way out of being a sex worker to become like a reputed teacher. And she's brought to him because he's in such a depression that he's not talking to anybody or bathing, stuff like that. And through their conversation, discovers that he's her daughter. He has a vision that he has to go to Ephesius and pray before the altar of Diane and tell his story. So he takes his daughter and Helicanus and a bunch of people, and they go off that way instead of going back to Tyre. Well, when they get there, he goes to the statue of Diane in the temple, and it just so happens that Tessa is standing right there as he recounts his story. He's like, I lost my wife at sea, and she gave birth to my daughter, who was raised over here, and blah, 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 and he says the whole thing, and Tessa's like, holy crap, and she faints. And then he's like, oh my goodness, is this Tessa? And they revive her, and Lord Saruman is there and tells the story of how she washed up on the beach and there were all these jewels and things with her, and he's like, come and take a look and I'll show you all the stuff that was in this coffin with her so that you can make sure that you are who you are. And Tessa looks at Pericles and she's like, my Pericles used to have that same exact ring. And they go through the whole, is it really you? Is it really you? Yes, this means that it's you. Yes, this means that it's you. Tessa gets to meet her daughter Marina for the first time. They embrace. It's all very loving. They decide that Marina, yes, is going to marry the Lord Governor of Mytilene. But then the two of them will go back to Tyre and rule there. Meanwhile, Pericles and Tessa are going to go to Pentapolis and rule there because Tessa's father has since died. And that's the end of the play. They decide that they're going to do the things. So Gower in the epilogue says to us, in Antiochus and his daughter you have heard of monstrous lust, the due and just reward. In Pericles, his queen and daughter seen, although assailed with fortune fierce and keen, virtue preferred from fell destruction's blast, led on by heaven and crowned with joy at last. In Helicanus, you may well descry a figure of truth, of faith, of loyalty. In Reverend Saruman there well appears the worth that learned charity eye wears. For wicked Cleon and his wife, when fame had spread his cursed deed, the honored name of Pericles to rage the city turned, that him and his they in his palace burn. The gods for murder seemed so content to punish, although not done, but meant. So, on your patience evermore attending, new joy wait on you. Here our play has ending. So it's just a recap. Antiochus was bad, so he paid for it. Pericles and his family were good, so they were rewarded. Helicanus was truthful and honest and loyal, so he's rewarded. Saruman did well, so he's rewarded. Cleon and his wife were like an angry mob once they found out that Cleon and Dionysa had plotted to kill Marina. An angry mob went and burned them in their palace. So it's very much a wrap-up where good things happen to the good people and bad things happen to the bad people. And then he's like, peace, mwah, love to all of you. And that's the end of the play. So that's Pericles for us. And it is billed as a comedy, and I think it's because oftentimes comedies end in marriage and tragedies end in death, and this one has the deaths turning into resurrections, and even though it has incest and half a dozen shipwrecks and a kidnapping by pirates and all of this sort of stuff, it does end with Marina we don't see Marina get married, but she's going to get married, and then there's this happy reunion of Pericles and his whole family, and the good people get what they deserve and the bad people get what they deserve. So it's a little bit of a weird play, I think, and as I mentioned at the beginning when we started in on it, Pericles is not in the first folio. It only exists in quartos, and a lot of scholars have debated whether or not Shakespeare wrote this entirely on his own, and I think that there's enough differences in the text and enough differences in the themes and in the structure and all of that sort of thing to argue that he probably did write it with somebody else as opposed to writing it entirely himself. So it's a play that just has a different feel to it than some of the others, and I can't really explain it better than that, except to say I've spent the last almost 3 years reading Shakespeare every day, and this play just feels different. I don't know if it's that it doesn't feel as deep or what, or if it's that it has all these elements of all these other different plays in it. But yeah, thank you for coming on the journey with me. It was fun to explore. Someday I'll come back and I'll dig into it even more than I did this time around. But yeah, that's Pericles for you. So tomorrow is new play day, hooray! And we get to start in on Richard III, which actually comes chronologically. It takes place right after Henry VI, Part 3. So if you want to do a little bit of homework between now and tomorrow and go back and refresh yourself on what happened in Henry VI, those 3 plays, that might be helpful in providing some context for Richard III. Anyway, I'll also fill you in on a bunch of crap when we get there. So I will see you tomorrow for a new play. Mwah.